You are very fortunate to have heard Alex sing that this morning. I, in fact, had sung that at church many years ago, and it was less than that. It's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day of life. Sometimes on the weekends, I call my sons or my mother, they live in different cities, to catch up, and they ask me, what's going on? And I can't think of anything to say. I usually say, oh, nothing much. What's going on with you? Or, church stuff. I don't know, many of you probably have had that same experience. Calling up your relatives or friends and checking in, and just, especially during this COVID, and even after this COVID time, you just look at what's going on around you, and it just seems like nothing's happening. Same old, same old. But you know what? During this time of COVID, I've tried to think about what Henry David Thoreau once said. It's not what you look at that matters. It's what you see. So I want to invite you for a moment to look back over your past week. Just let it kind of flow through your mind for a moment. What did it look like? Maybe nothing outstanding seems to jump to your mind, but I want you to look at it again. And is there something that you see there if you go a little deeper? Every experience offers us the opportunity to look past the mundane and routine, and offers us the opportunity for new insight, wisdom, perhaps even an experience we might call enlightenment or transformation. I want to tell you a story about someone who seems very mundane. Her name is Leonora Carrington. She was born in 1917 in Lancashire, England, to an industrialist father and an Irish mother. She was raised on the fantastical tales of Irish origin by her nanny. Fantastical tales. Well, she got expelled from a couple of convent schools before enrolling in an art school in Florence, and she flourished there. Eventually, she settled in Mexico City, and she got married to a photographer, had a couple of sons. She lived her whole life pretty much in the same place in Mexico City after moving there. Well, she had friends, some like-minded artists. And she said, I painted for myself. I never believed anyone would exhibit or buy any painting or sculpture that I created. And that she did. She painted and she created some sculptures and she wrote some novels and she wrote a children's book. Doesn't sound like a shockingly unusual life in any way. Let me read you a story from her children's book, The Milk of Dreams. Jeremy was the son of a lawyer. He liked making little holes in the sofa. They looked like little mouse. And he put food in those little holes in the sofa. He gave them bread and butter, bacon, spinach, meat sandwiches. And the little holes, became more and more like little mouths. And they grew teeth. And they began to chew the food. Well, one day, Jeremy forgot to put any food in the little hole. And one of them got cross, and when the lawyer sat down, one of those little teethy mouths bit him. So he told his son, "You better look out," said. And he had all those little holes, the lawyer had all those little holes sewn up, so all they could do was go, Jeremy, he had an idea. He made a little hole under the sofa and pushed up vitamins. And the sofa got very thin, but its legs grew very long. So nobody could sit on it anymore. Only the madman with wings. And it can't be cleaned anymore. It's too tall. That's the whole story. Okay, so digest that a little bit. I want to give you a little bit more about her. I'm going to show you some of her paintings. This next one is a self-portrait with a horse. And the next one is this is the Gigantress. That's another one of her works. And finally, Evening Conference. Manny Marino writes in the online pagan news service, The Wild Hunt, long before the current interest in occultism and mysticism as a countervalent to patriarchy, surrealist painter and author Leonora Carrington had been using witch imagery and occultism to dismantle power and chauvinism. Carrington often said, "I didn't have time to be anybody's muse." Because of her non-conformism, and she was very young, before she was an adult, she was forcibly institutionalized a couple of times very early. Her parents didn't know what to do with her. In her 1944 memoir, Down Below, Carrington wrote about being declared incurably insane, but finding a doctor who would help her put on and take off the mask which would be her shield against the hostility of conformism. You see, there were risks for her expressing unconventional ideas. Carrington, despite her really mundane life, growing up in a stable home, living in one city much of her life, being married, having children, saw the world very differently from many, probably most, people around her. But to her surprise, her works resonated with a number of people. So what does this have to do with searching for enlightenment or insight or being open to awakening? Have you had an idea or perspective that didn't conform with those of your peers or co-workers or family? Did you express it? And perhaps even continue to express it? And were there consequences? Some people who find their ideas too outside the mainstream, countervalent to the dominant culture, suppress their insights, don't let others know about them, until they push their ideas and perspectives so far down within them that they no longer impact their lives or the culture around them, except maybe as an afterthought. I've come to believe some things. First, I am more likely to live a healthy, authentic life if I express my ideas, perspectives, truths, beliefs, no matter how out of step or unconventional they may be. Each time I honor one of my insights, it's like putting the pebble in the jar, like the crow did in the story. Knowing that eventually I can eventually reach into that life-giving liquid essence of who I really am and drink fullest of my truest self, quenching my thirst for understanding who I am. And I found that, yes, this can happen by myself, but it seems to be richer when I do it in the company of others. Different people, authentic people, sharing themselves with me as I share myself with them. New parts of me are exposed, more pebbles dropped in the jar. More of me I have access to. Now I see that some of the things that may be that I am exposed to, that I come to understand, are aspects of myself that I don't want to live out loud in the world. But with self-knowledge, I can, with intentionality, choose what I bring out into the world. I can consider who I want to be and how I want to help the world to be a better place for all. And I can realize how my presence impacts those around me. I don't know how many of you know the story of the Buddha. He started out as an isolated, rich kid, a prince, that went out into the world. He saw an old person, a sick person, a corpse, and finally a person that was on a spiritual path. Having been so protected by the walls of the palace, he was shocked to see suffering in the world. And so he left the palace behind and tried to find a spiritual path to deal with suffering. He didn't sit beneath the Bodhi tree right after leaving the palace. He met spiritual teachers. He explored different spiritual practices. He almost starved himself to death by avoiding all physical comforts and pleasures, as he saw many other holy men do. He learned much about himself during this part of his life, but he did not find the wisdom about suffering by searching in the world. Each of us is on a spiritual, ethical, moral journey. We can journey reactively, dealing with what comes up in front of us without much reflection or intention, just dealing with whatever comes in our faces without searching for personal insight, without putting any pebbles in the jar. Or we can journey toward wholeness, toward authenticity, and seek insights about how we can intentionally impact the world around us from the inside out. When we see our experiences Not just look at them, but see them, holding them in our consciousness without attachment or denial, reflecting on them. We are opening ourselves to Bodhi tree moments of insight. Eventually. See, insight and wisdom is not predictable. You don't know when you're going to have it, but they happen. They percolate up within us. They tend to steal upon us when we're not even looking for them. If we allow ourselves to be open and ready for them. You see, part of this process is doing the work of living life with awareness of being able to see, not just look. In communion with and sharing your lives, ideas, beliefs, truths, meanings with other people. And making time in your lives for reflection and meditation, prayer, and embracing those opportunities, those pebbles that come up, to put them in your jar and allow what is truly within you to rise to the surface. And then to drink deeply from your spiritual jar of self-understanding and wholeness. And then, if you want, if you feel like it's right, if it's who you want to be in the world and how you want to affect the world, share. Share who you are, your insights, with others. I thought as I was putting this sermon together, I can say to you all this. But how will you know what that experience is like? And so I found this short piece by Eve Ensler. She's a playwright, American playwright, performer, feminist, activist. And she had this awakening, this time of insight when she was in her hospital bed fighting cancer. And I wanted to share it with you as a sample of what the experience might be like. She writes, "What I hadn't anticipated was the tree. I was too weak to think or write or call or even watch a movie. All I could do was stare at the tree, which was the only thing in my view. At first, it annoyed me, and I thought I would go mad from boredom. But after the first days and many hours, I began to see the tree. On Tuesday, I meditated on the bark. On Friday, the green leaves shimmering in the late afternoon light. For hours, I lost myself, my body, my being dissolved into the tree. All of this was new to me. You see, I was raised an American. All value lies in the future, in the dream, in production in this culture. There is no present tense. There is no value in what is, only is in what might be made or exploited from what already exists. Of course, the same was true of me. I had no inherent value without work or effort, without making myself into something significant, without proving my worth. I had no right or reason to be here. Life itself was inconsequential unless it led to something. Unless the tree would be wood, would be a house, would be a table. What value was there in a tree? So to actually lie in my hospital bed and see tree, enter the tree, to find the green life inherent in the tree, this was my awakening. Each morning I opened my eyes. I could not wait to focus on the tree. I would let the tree take me. Each day was different, based on the light or the wind or the rain. The tree was a tonic, a cure, a guru, a teaching. There was only the tree. My tree. Not that I owned it. I had no desire for that. But it come to be my friend, my point of connection, my meditation, my new reason to live. I'm not writing or producing or on the phone or making anything happen. I was not contributing much more than my appreciation of the tree, my love of green, my commitment to trunk and bark, my celebration of branch, my insane delight over the gentle white May blossoms that were beginning to flower everywhere. My friends, can you imagine an experience like that in your normal, mundane, everyday life? Washing dishes, walking the dog, riding a bike, having that experience beyond looking, but seeing something that can offer insight, wisdom, enlightenment. And so, my friends, I invite you to see what happens within you by letting life, creation, what people share with you, their truth, meaning, what nature offers, the pebbles that may grow into awareness, help you grow into awareness of who you are, so that you can drink in who you are more fully, sharing who you are with the world. Becoming a more authentic person. Knowing yourself. So that you can choose what you bring into the world and what change you want to make in the world because of who you are. Resist the hostility of conformism and embrace the risk of speaking, living your unconventional ideas into life. My friends, you are not awakening from, but awakening to a fuller, richer, more authentic self. So may it be.